look at statement of financial position, and there's going to be a number of items on this. So always what we start off with when we're looking at our statement of financial position is our fixed assets. And actually, if you click in here to the income statement, we had done a little bit of work here at the very bottom. So I'm just going to copy and paste that over. Obviously, if you're writing this in an exam, you would just write that back out. I know I'd said to you before as well in an exam, you don't have to do this little table down the bottom for your calculation. You can do a little bit of rough work. They normally have a box down the very bottom of the exam where it says workings, and that's where you can do your depreciation. So this table here, this little bottom part, that won't necessarily be on the exam, so don't expect it. Okay, so I've put in my cost, my depreciation, and my MBV there. And the final thing that I have when I look at this trial balance, so my fixed assets, some premises, machinery, and vehicles are fixed assets. So I have my premises as well. So I'm just going to pop them in here. And my premises is 460,000. And there's no depreciation on that, so the MBV is going to be 460,000, or my net value. And then I'm just going to get my total fixed assets. And I just get that by summing each of these columns up. So when I say columns, I mean this way, okay? So I'm going to put sum equals sum. So you would just do this on a calculator, these three values together, and I can just copy that the whole way across. And what you get is all of these values, they add together, okay, to give you the amount that you need. So that's my total fixed assets. My next thing is my current assets. So my current assets is anything that you have that is an asset, but it changes from year to year. So if I look at my current assets, I can see I have cash here. So let's just highlight that. We'll put it in a different color for current assets. So let's put it in green. So I have cash. I also always have my closing stock down here. So that would be the closing stock of the previous year. That's always going to be in there. That's the first thing that needs to go in. So I have that, and I have cash. So let's put those in. So closing stock. And I'm going to put these into the first column because my total figure I'm going to use when I'm looking at my current liabilities. So I have 24,560 here. 24,560. And then I also have my cash, and that's going to be the 900. And then I'm just going to put a line under there, and the total value again, I'm going to just, so I add those two together, and the total value again, I'm going to put it in here. Okay. Then I'm going to look at my current liabilities. So current liabilities are things like creditors, creditors, debtors will go in under my current assets. Anything that we owe. So you can see that we have a bank overdraft. So I can see that that's here, and I'm going to just change the color of that so you can see that it's a different one. So my bank overdraft is my big one. My long-term loan goes into the very, very end. So at the minute, my bank overdraft is the only current liability I have. So I'm going to put that in the middle because I don't have to do anything with that figure. So bank overdraft, 7,600. Now, what I get when I subtract the both of those is what's called a working capital. So again, I'm just going to put my line underneath here. And my working capital is just going to go in here. So that's the 25,000 minus the 7,600, and that gives me 17,860. And that's my working capital. I am going to add those two together. So I have equals this plus this. Again, I just want to put my line underneath that there so that you can see I worked with these two figures. So this figure here plus this figure here gave me this figure here. Okay, now I'm just going to highlight that cell because remember we said before that this is one of the cells that I need to make sure that is the same as the final figure down the very bottom. Okay, so what we're going to have then is finance by, and my finance by, what goes into my finance by is first of all my share capital. And there's two types of share capital. So there's authorised, AUTH is authorised, and issued. And you can see here my share. So my shares, you can see my authorised share capital was 750,000, 750,000, and then my issued is up here. So we have issued share capital 420,000. Okay. Then we also have my long-term loan. So add long-term loan. So I can add in my long-term loan here, which is 110,000. 000. And then add reserves as well. And my reserves come from my income statement. So my reserves were here on my income statement. Again, I'm just going to highlight them in a different colour so you can see them. So that's 12,600. So if I go into my statement here, I have 12,600. And if I sum them up, so sum and these three. Now, I clearly have a bit of a difference here. So what I need to go back and have a look at is that there must have been something that I've forgotten to put in, or there is something that has not been added in correctly. So if I just check back into my trial balance and see did I add everything in. So I have my long-term loan went in, my dividend paid went in, my cash went in, bank overdraft went in. All of these went into my expenses, so they don't go into the statement of financial position. Then I have my sales returns and purchase returns, so they won't go in there either. My premises and machinery, of course, I added them in. My carriage out, my insurance, are all of my expenses. So often what I do here is that I just see what my issue was. So I have 24,560, and that looks like a figure that I may have just done something incorrect with. 24,560 is my closing stock. So when I look at that, why is that? That tells me I've double counted that somewhere. I just need to be very careful when we double count. So my closing stock, just check that my figures all added up here correctly. Yeah, so that was my current liability, my bank overdraft. These two guys added up perfectly. So this is my closing stock. Oh yes, I know what went wrong, and it was up here somewhere because I forgot to take out my closing stock. So when I look up here, I missed my closing stock just in here. So add row above, and what I should have done was when I got my total cost of sales, which was, yeah, so when I got this, I should have equal sum and then pull that right in. So I just forgot one figure. Just make sure all my figures tie in properly there. So I just forgot one figure, and that was to make sure that, so I'm just going to add another row here, and then my less closing stock. So my closing stock was 25,000. Was it 25,000 or 24,560? 24,560. And then my total cost of sales is equal to this minus this. That's perfect. So I'm just going to drag this down to get my that's going to be, yeah, that's going to be 210,700 instead. Now that will obviously change this figure. It will then change my net profit, okay, and then I took away the dividend, so I get a different number for my reserves. So now I have 37,160, and that's what I'm going to put in here, 37,160, and I should get the same, which I do. My balance goes to zero. So it's really important when you're doing the statement of financial position. Now I understand it will be a little bit more difficult when you're writing these out, because if you make a mistake like that, there's a lot to add and a lot to change. So I just want to quickly recap on what happened there. I had forgotten to put in my closing stock in the very first section. Then when I got to my statement of financial position, I could see that there was a difference between these two figures. So these two figures should always be the exact same. So when I added my reserves, sorry, this should be actually what we call capital employed. Now just fix my formulas there. So this is the last part, which we call capital employed. Capital employed. So what I did then was I subtracted these two to see what my difference was, and I could see that my difference was my closing stock. So it told me that I had put in my closing stock into my balance sheet here, but it was obviously missing from my income statement. And then when I went back in here to check, I realised that I actually had forgotten to put my closing stock in here. Okay, so again, your closing stock needs to be subtracted from your sales. Then when I did that, this figure here changed, obviously, because my closing stock had to be subtracted, which changed my gross profits, which then changed my net profit, and then changed my reserve. So if any figures are going to change, once you've changed them in this column, it's going to be a majority of these figures here, okay? But generally, if you don't see that, or if you're not able to figure out what it is, the main thing is that you've gotten down to the bottom of the statement. Even if they don't match, you've gotten the majority of the marks. If they don't match, it's important then to go back and look and see what is it that you've forgotten to do.